Well, welcome to church this morning. I'm Cleaver Van Zant, minister of the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice, where we haven't had an in-person worship service on a Sunday morning since last March. But today, we are back live on a Sunday morning with all of you here. All of us three, our AV experts, Dick and Tom and myself, so we'll just see how this goes. There is a black screen on the monitor. If you've tuned in at 10 a.m. on Sunday, February 7th, you're seeing us live for the first time in a long time. If you're watching this sometime after that, this may seem like I hope it seems like the usual recorded service you've grown somewhat used to. But because this is the first time we've tried this live streaming on a Sunday morning, I hope you'll consider cutting us just a little bit of slack. Our intent is not to be perfect, but to try something that may feel more communal, and importantly, something we can continue to do even after we can invite you back into the sanctuary at some time in the future when it becomes safe enough to do so. There may be a few differences today from live services in the past and from recently recorded services. One thing is, there will be no takebacks or do-overs today. What you see is what you get. Or rather, what we do is what you get. If we flub things up or if the technology goes belly up, oh well. The good thing is we're doing this together, and that's what it's always been about, isn't it? Now, if things do go right, it will be due to the dedication and perseverance of our two AV gurus, Dick Smith and Tom Reeves. Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure, and this congregation can't thank you enough for all you've done to get us to this historic day. Another thing, for the next few weeks at least, the music will continue to be pre-recorded, especially the hymns. There seems no safe enough way for us to sing together in a relatively closed space yet, so the hymns will come to you so that you can sing along at home. But singing in the sanctuary is still a no-no, even with just the very few of us here. If you're so inclined, please hit the donate button on our webpage and give as generously there as you can. And I want to remind you that this is pledge drive season, and so we hope you'll fill out a pledge card that you received in the mail or by email and return it as soon as you can. Please remember also that there continues to be a coffee hour on Zoom each Sunday at 11 a.m. after this service, where you can check in with other members and friends. Info for that coffee hour is on our Facebook page and on our website at uucov.org. So as different as this service may turn out to be, we hope you'll find something here that speaks to you and maybe lifts you up or challenges you in ways that lead to spiritual reflection and personal growth. We're glad you've chosen to join us today. Welcome to church. The prelude begins our worship. worship comes from the Reverend Rebecca Savage. We light our flaming chalice as a beloved people, united in love and thirsting for restorative justice. May this flame melt away the tethers that uphold whiteness in our midst. May it spark in us a spirit of humility and ignite in us a radical love that transforms our energy into purposeful action. This chalice of audacious hope shines a light on our shared past, signaling our intention to listen deeply, reflect wisely, and move boldly toward our highest ideals. Let us worship together. Our hymn is number 42, Morning So Fair to See, first and last verses.
Good morning. My husband Ralph and I are new members, snowbirds, spending 6 months here and 6 months in upstate New York. In January of 2017, we were 3-month renters in Venice. I needed security and sanctuary from a world I wasn't understanding. I needed a safe place for my fear and a nurturing place where I could explore my spirituality and continue questioning and learning. We'd been to UCOV a few times and participated in some programs. It seemed right to come here. The weekly message was helpful, but the people connection wasn't there. And when we returned to New York, it was mostly out of sight, out of mind. We're still part of a Binghamton congregation. It feels like having a foot in each place, rather like having one foot in a boat and the other on the dock. To be securely moored, you need a rope, well tied at each end, connecting your boat to something secure. It's a balancing act. And we aren't spiritually moored at the Venice end, or we weren't. When in New York, it was easy to disconnect from UCOV. Each year when we returned to Venice, we weren't fully committed to tying our rope to the UCOV dock. We attended services but didn't feel really connected with the congregation. Connection really doesn't work well when you aren't securely tied. A loose loop works well for a while, but it isn't secure. UCOV offered a secure cleat to tie up and connect, but we didn't quite get the loop around it well enough to pull our boat to the dock. We remained at a distance. All that changed in 2020 with isolation and a world of Zoom and YouTube. This past summer in New York, we were not fully disconnected from UCOV. It was not out of sight, out of mind. I could follow the group through Facebook. I could Zoom book club. We could see the church and the service on YouTube. It brought us closer to the UCOV congregation. It felt good to be in your presence, even if it wasn't physical. It was a virtual rope pulling us closer to the dock. It felt good. It felt like home. It felt right. Ralph and I decided it was time to deepen our connection to UCOV while still maintaining our commitment to our New York congregation. We had learned of the UCOV socially distant sunset gatherings on Facebook. When we returned in the fall, we started attending. We attended the Pathways classes and made the commitment to join UCOV, looping and tying our rope around the waiting and secure UCOV cleat. The Pathways leaders connected us to the mat-making group and a small fellowship group, all that by Zoom. In isolation, we've had time to get to know and be more involved in the UCOV connection. And even in, and perhaps because of, a Zoom world, we feel we have made new friends and engaged our spirit. UCOV has been welcoming and nurturing. We wanted to commit to UCOV, pull in, tie up, connect, and help support UCOV as best we could so it could remain secure. We're most grateful to have found an opening and accepting congregation, north and south, and a Zoom world that enables us to be connected to both. In order to keep UCOV secure, we're filling out our pledge card and returning it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Avery, Director of Religious Education.
I am her helper.
What's your name?
Cece.
Cece. Our kids have their own religious education by Zoom each Sunday at 10 a.m. If you'd like to attend or to help your child attend, info can be found on our website at ucov.org or on our Facebook page. This week, I'll be reading Westlandia.
I will help read because I can read. Westlandia by Paul
Fleischman, illustrated by Kevin Hawks. Of course he's miserable, moaned Wesley's mother. He sticks out like a nose, snapped his father. Listening through the heating vent, Wesley knew they were right. He was an outcast from the civilization around him. He alone in his town disliked pizza and soda, alarming his mother and the school nurse. He found professional football stupid. He refused to shave half his head, the hairstyle worn by all the other boys, despite his father's bribe of $5. Passing his neighborhood's two styles of housing, garage on the left and garage on the right, Wesley alone dreamed of more exciting forms of shelter. He had no friends, but plenty of tormentors. Fleeing them was the one sport he was good at. Each afternoon, his mother asked him what he'd learned in school that day. That seeds are carried great distances by the winds, he answered on Wednesday. That each civilization has its staple food crop, he answered on Thursday. That school's over and I should find a good summer project, he answered on Friday. As always, his father mumbled, I'm sure you'll use that knowledge often. Suddenly, Wesley's thoughts shot sparks. His eyes blazed. His father was right. He could actually use what he'd learned that week for a summer project that would top all others. He would grow his own staple food crop and found his own civilization. The next morning, he turned over a plot of ground in his yard. That night a wind blew in from the west. It raced through the trees and set his curtains snapping. Wesley lay awake listening. His land was being planted. 5 days later, the first seedling appeared. "You'll have almighty bedlam on your hands if you don't get those weeds out," warned his neighbor. "Actually, that's my crop," replied Wesley. "In this type of garden, there are no weeds." Following ancient tradition, Wesley's fellow gardeners grew tomatoes, beans, Brussels sprouts, and nothing else. Wesley found it thrilling to open his land to chance, to invite the new and the unknown. Plants shot up past his knees, then his waist. They seemed to be all of the same sort. Wesley couldn't find them in any plant book. "Are those tomatoes, beans, or Brussels sprouts?" asked Wesley's neighbor. "None of the above," replied Wesley. Fruit appeared, yellow at first, then blushing to magenta. Wesley picked one and sliced through the rind to the juicy purple center. He took a bite and found the taste an entrancing blend of peach, strawberry, pumpkin pie, and flavors he had no name for. Ignoring the shelf of cereals in the kitchen, Wesley took to breakfasting on the fruit. He dried half a rind to serve as a cup, built his own squeezing device, and drank the fruit's juice throughout the day. Pulling up a plant, he found large tubers on the roots. These he boiled, fried, or roasted on the family barbecue, seasoning them with a pinch of the plant's highly aromatic leaves. It was hot work tending to his crop. To keep off the sun, Wesley wove himself a hat from strips of the plant's woody bark. His success with the hat inspired him to devise a spinning wheel and loom, on which he wove a loose-fitting robe from the stalks of the soft inner fibers. Unlike jeans, which he found scratchy and heavy, the robe was comfortable, reflected the sun, and offered a myriad opportunities for pockets. His schoolmates were scornful at first, then curious. Grudgingly, Wesley allowed them 10 minutes apiece at his mortar, crushing the plant seeds to collect the oil. This oil had a tangy scent and served him both as suntan lotion and mosquito repellent. He rubbed it on his face each morning and sold small amounts to his former tormentors at the price of $10 per bottle. "What's happened to your watch?" asked his mother one day. Wesley admitted he no longer wore it. He told time by the stalks he used as a sundial and had divided the day into 8 segments, the number of petals on the plant's flower. He adopted a new counting system as well, based likewise upon the number 8. His domain, home to many such innovations, he named Westlandia. Uninterested in traditional sports, Wesley made up his own. These were designed for a single player, and used many different parts of the plant. His spectators looked on with envy. Realizing that more players would offer him more scope, Wesley invented other games that would include his schoolmates, games rich with strategy and complex scoring systems. He tried to be patient with the other players' blunders. August was unusually hot. Wesley built himself a platform and took to sleeping in the middle of Westlandia. He passed the evening playing a flute he fashioned from a stalk or gazing up at the sky, renaming the constellations. His parents noted Wesley's improved morale. "It's the first time in years he's looked happy," said his mother. Wesley gave them a tour of Westlandia. "What do you call this plant?" asked his father. Not knowing the name, Wesley had begun calling it Swist, from the sound of its leaves rustling in the breeze. In like manner, he'd named his new fabrics, games, and foods, until he'd created an entire language. Mixing the plant's oils with soot, Wesley made a passable ink. As a finale to his summer project, he used the ink and his own 8-letter alphabet to record the history of his civilization's founding. In September, Wesley returned to school. He had no shortage of friends.
The late Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson was an important presence in Unitarian Universalism, who died suddenly last November. Here is a meditation she wrote for a book called Voices from the Margins. We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here not by coincidence, but because we choose to journey together, learning to love our neighbors, learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, and creating the beloved community. Together, we are one. We lift up those in this community who face change, challenge, or loss today as we hold within our hearts all who suffer. And now we pray, each in our own ways, into the silence. The hopes of this community are offered forth in the names of all those who've gone before and in the names of all those who will come after, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Shalom, salam, amen, and blessed be. The interlude is Ghost Ship, written and performed by a young pianist, Katie Adelson. I have spoken to so many people who are so ready for all this pandemic junk to be over and done with. If you're happy with the way things are right now, then I guess I haven't heard from you. I think most everybody is ready to get beyond this mess with all the reports of COVID variants and the numbers of new cases piling up every week, and the number of COVID-related deaths in the United States alone reported ones anyway, topping 460,000 as of today. If you've gotten your vaccination, congratulations. That is an amazing thing. If not, there is some information about strategies you might try on our Facebook page and in our email blasts. I hope those things will help you get a vaccination for yourself and for your loved ones. For many of us, it's apparently going to take maybe months to be vaccinated. Regardless, we're tired of it all. Tired of the quarantining, tired of chasing vaccines, tired of being alone, or tired of trying to do our jobs while we homeschool our kids and nurse our sick relatives and take care of everything else in our houses all the time without a break. At this point, the world we dream about is one with just the tiniest bit of normal in it. One where we could get back together, see each other, and imagine this: talk to each other with our entire faces uncovered so that we could talk and hear and understand each other again. Alas, such a lovely world remains, for now, a dream. Here at church, I hope you will rest assured that many of us are actively planning for such a dream world to become a reality at some point in the future, whether near or far. Not that any of us can predict when that glorious day will come, but we are not only dreaming here, but planning and preparing now for whenever that dream may happen. One thing that has concerned me over this protracted period of pandemic is that the dream world we used to hold out before us, the one based on our principles and a commonly held thirst for justice and equity, that world may have, of necessity perhaps over this difficult time, may have shrunk to become the one I just talked about, a dream world based on our own personal longings for contact and connection and community. But that other dream world has not gone away. Maybe it's gone dormant in some ways, but it has not evaporated. And therefore, I wanted to bring you an extended reading today from a Unitarian Universalist woman named Talia Nur Amin. Dr. Amin is a scholar and teacher who holds degrees from the State University of New York at Buffalo, from Virginia Tech, from Temple University. She is also an organizing board member of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, commonly known as BLUU, Blue. In a talk Dr. Amin gave back in the old world, in the long time ago before COVID, she said this: "When I go to congregations across the country, as an educator, I'm always interested in what's happening in RE, particularly in adult religious education. And when I'm seeing more bridge clubs and knitting circles than opportunities for theological study and religious engagement, I wonder if we haven't become a kind of a glorified country club, which I don't think is what the term beloved community means." End quote. Okay, so we used to have bridge clubs and maybe a knitting club. And I know we weave mats for the homeless, which is a different thing altogether. But Dr. Amin is not saying that those things, those more sociable things, are problematic on their own. She's not saying that. She's saying that if that's all you do, if you have more of those than you have of Socrates cafes and Plato circles and other programming focused on religious engagement, then there might be an issue. She continues, I struggle when white UUs tell me how much Unitarian Universalism has been a gift to them because it surrounds them with like-minded people, because it has been a refuge from the spiritual trauma that they experienced in other places. And she says, while I'm glad that our shared faith provides a safe haven for those who've experienced exile from other faith communities, that's a part of my story too. End quote. Now, I know for me, when I first entered Unitarian Universalist congregation many years ago, I too felt some scarring from past church experiences. When I first visited there, I probably didn't want to hear those religious-sounding words or do those religious-looking rituals anymore. It took me some years to figure out, but I was eventually able to reclaim some of the helpful parts of my past and begin to understand the not so helpful. I don't want to insinuate that it was easy. It took a lot of work, and maybe it's not ever really over, but it's better, for me anyway. Now, Dr. Amin went further, quoting my friend, the Reverend Kim Hampton. Reverend Kim, she said, reminds us that Unitarian Universalism has to do more than be a spiritual emergency room. You see, nobody lives in the emergency room. Our faith communities have to spur deeper religious growth and principled engagement. I'll tell you a story. A few months back, she says, I was at a congregation in the South, and I had done a little speech, and we had moved into breakout rooms. And I'm in this room, I'm in this room, and I ask, so what is it about the way you understand your faith that would call you to be committed to dismantling white supremacy? A lovely woman raised her hand and said, I've been a member of this congregation for almost 30 years. I'm on the board. I'm here every Sunday. And I don't know how to answer that question because I don't really know what I believe. Being here, she said, has really just sort of been intellectual for me. Being here has really just sort of been intellectual for me. Now, Dr. Amin was aghast. If somebody has been in our congregations for almost 3 decades, she said, and can't tell you what it is they believe, then I'm not sure what we're doing. I don't know what kind of opportunities we're honestly providing for people to wrestle with the hard questions about living out this faith day to day. If people can't articulate a commitment to ending oppression, to eradicating inequality, anti-blackness, white supremacy culture, and other injustices through our Unitarian Universalist faith, then I'm not really sure that we've been on the ball. It seems to me that we build beloved community by taking all those things on as a personal commitment, not just a commitment to thinking about doing it, but a commitment to making that reality real for all of us. I hope you might think about this for a while. But I can tell you right now that I agree with Talia Nur Amin. If we're not offering the kinds of religious education experiences that help us wrestle with what it is we believe, if we're not asking each other to make commitments to advance justice and equity, if we're not holding each other accountable even to being kind to one another, what are we doing? Now, I know this sort of harder and more complicated work might have taken a back seat to our personal wants and needs this past year. You do have to take care of yourself. You do have to get your own needs met to some degree to be able to reach out to others, don't you? But here we are, maybe, just maybe, on the cusp of turning a few things around in the world and in our own lives. And so it's time to start looking to a new world and to begin putting the building blocks of that new world together as best we can. And I'm not willing to give up on that world we dream about, not just the one where it becomes safe enough for us to get together once again, but just as importantly, the one where we remember and we live out our principles. Now, I think the world we dream about is, at least for the privileged among us, is in some ways both already here and not quite yet. That world is already here if you can see a blue sky, if you can hear a bird sing, if you can feel a breeze on your skin, if you know you are loved. And still, it is not a world where our principles hold sway. It is not yet a world of justice and equity. It is not yet a world where every person is afforded the inherent worth and dignity we claim they have. It is not yet a world where we care for the interconnected web of all existence in all the ways we should. It is not yet a world in which we have built the beloved community. The beloved community is a term popularized by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For Dr. King, the beloved community was not a pie-in-the-sky utopian goal where the lions would lie down in idyllic harmony with the lambs. Rather, the beloved community was for him a realistic goal that would be achieved when a critical mass of people committed themselves to a global vision of all people sharing the wealth and the beauty of the earth. In Dr. King's vision, poverty, hunger, and homelessness would be eradicated because international standards of decency simply wouldn't allow for such things. International disputes would be resolved not by military power, but by conflict resolution and peaceful reconciliation. Racism and discrimination, bigotry and prejudice would be replaced by a spirit of sister and brother and siblinghood. Love and trust would triumph over fear and hatred. Peace with justice would prevail. Dr. King didn't say there'd be no arguing in this beloved community. Indeed, he was well aware that conflict is inevitable in human affairs. But he did believe that conflict could be resolved through peaceful means, ending in a spirit of friendship, goodwill, and mutual cooperation. So the lowercase beloved community many of us are longing for most fervently right now may have regressed somewhat into merely a community where we get back together with a few people we know and love. It makes all kinds of sense that that's what we long for at this point. It has been so long. But once we've got that, what then? Now, Dr. Amin said she thought we needed opportunities for theological study and religious engagement, which means to me that beyond just getting back together socially, we ought to look for ways to help each other learn to articulate our faith and to live out our values. As the Reverend Kim Hampton suggested, Unitarian Universalism needs to be more than a spiritual emergency room. Better, a truly beloved community, which is not going to happen just because we get to take our masks off and get back together. Such an uppercase beloved community where love and trust triumph over fear and hatred will only happen if we commit to a larger vision and then do the hard work of making it so. So may it be. Our hymn is number 39, Bring, O Morn, Thy Music, first verse.
Starlit silence, oceans laugh in rapture to the storm winds coursing free. Suns and planets chorus, praise to thee most holy, who was and is and evermore shall be.
A benediction from the Reverend John Johnstone. When we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome and say together, Amen. Go in peace, walk softly on your paths, and may the light of love shine on you all your days.